listen to each other. It's a different environment which we want to create from a political perspective with involvement of the whole inter-American system. And there are many inter-American institutions. I mentioned 3 of them before: Pan American Health Organization, critically important also for the issue which Prime Minister Gaston Brown has put on the table on mental health, or if you want, non-communicable diseases as well. The OAS has played a role in it. We are not a health institution, but we can give political momentum to these issues so that the Pan American Health Organization can take and run with it. The same is the case with the impact on development. The crisis which we have because of hurricanes in the region, not only in the Caribbean. There are many other countries which face natural disasters. How do we facilitate a process? Well, we engage with the sub-regional banks. We engage with the Inter-American Development Bank. Again, the OAS is not a development financing organization, but in the political discourse, we must make sure that the OAS provides attention to these issues. And once it gets there, then the mandate following to the institutions that need to execute will follow as well. So we see clearly a role for the OAS, and the only thing which we need to do now is set up the institution as a well-run organization, effectively demonstrate its value to the member states. Member states invest in it every year. We're not asking for more money. We will show that we can do better with what we have, but there will be a point when we need to look at what is the contribution of member states, but only once we have determined and demonstrated the value of the OAS to the whole region. In terms of the Caribbean experience, I think I mentioned already, the Caribbean brings experiences which are very valuable to the whole hemisphere. I come from the region, but let me be clear as well, my responsibility is to the whole Americas. That means all the member states of the hemisphere. And but it is great to learn from each other and to share those practices. Now we can bring certainly those assets which the Caribbean can present to the betterment of the whole hemisphere, also to the OAS table from an institutional perspective. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. We have another question from the floor.
Good morning. Rakib Aprizi from the Antigua Barbuda Broadcasting Services. Mr. SG, my question is to you in terms of the OAS's overall responsibility in the regional integration of the people of the Americas. So the US has made its position clear on things like travel, deportation, and how that, and the fact that that actually affects OAS member states directly, given the fact that we are on some travel ban lists potentially, as well as deportations from the US are going to OAS member states. And seeing as the US is a member of the OAS, any indication from any of the member states regarding possibilities of any side meetings with the US on these issues, or will that be discussed generally?
Thank you. Of course, partly is this a question which should be addressed to my colleague on the left, as it is it's a bilateral issue. But from a more general perspective, let me say this. Every country has its own rules and regulations and laws to determine how they deal with the border issues, the flow of persons coming in and out. As long as the law is followed within the countries, there is little others can do. But there are 2 aspects which I always appeal to member states to keep in mind when deportations take place. It's not the first time this is happening. This is happening all the time. This is much more pronounced in terms of policy, and possibly more media attention. There are 2 aspects which we have to appeal to member states to recognize as well. One is that we need to observe the human rights of those being deported, in terms of the way deportation takes place, and that it's happening in a humane manner. The second one is that it's always better for those who are being deported, but also for those who have to receive the deportees, that there is some degree of consultation with the host countries, the receiving countries in this case, because that will facilitate a process where the host country can then prepare for such a inflow. That's the only two things we request member states to observe. So, and in terms of whether this question will be discussed further, it's up to the member states. It's up to individual countries to discuss. I know that discussions are taking place, so I hope that member states, both the United States and the affected member states, will be able to find bilateral solutions to that effect. On a broader picture with regard to migration, and deportation has a little bit to do with that, I have always appealed that we not only focus on the short-term resolve or resolution on this by focusing on the legal, procedural aspects, but focus also on the reasons why people migrate and they become either undocumented or beyond the time they are allowed to spend in the country. The reason why has to do with what underlying causes are there for migration to take place. In the most cases, it's a forced migration because of security issues, no prospects for the future in a certain country, in their own country, and sometimes natural disasters, political instability. So we have to work on two tracks at the same time. Countries can do what they need to do on the basis of their own decision, but at the same time, and there is a role for the OAS and the Inter-American system to play on this, is to foster social and economic well-being in the countries. And this is something which we are discussing also with the private sector. How can we create more jobs in the country so that people from that country who do not wish normally to move can stay in the country and live a peaceful, happy life with prospects towards the future for their children. I think that's another track which is much longer because that takes more time, more investments, much more closer collaboration with societies and governments. But we're going to look at what options are there as well. Important is that people are not forced to leave their country. And if that happens, then migration and deportations will become less prominent than we see today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Before moving on to more questions, let me make a brief announcement. I'm being told that some people viewing us through the webcast are experiencing some technical difficulties. I wanted to reassure them that we will be posting the full video and audio of the press conference in our website, our YouTube channel, and all our social media, so you will have access to the full press conference. Are there any more questions from the floor? If not, we can move to some questions we've received remotely. Guillermo Iriart from La Nación in Argentina. To the Secretary General, what are your expectations regarding the relationship with Argentina in particular? What role could Argentina play in addressing crisis in the region, especially in Venezuela? And is there any plan in the way to secure the release of foreign nationals detained in Venezuela, such as Argentine gendarme Nahuel Gallo?
Thank you very much for La Nación's question. I recognize Argentina as a founding member, a long-standing member of the Organization of American States, and as an organization that has made valuable contributions from a policy perspective to the OAS. So the role we see for Argentina in the OAS is to continue remaining a strong member of the OAS and share with us their priorities, their set of objectives they would like to see established. That conversation with Argentina is ongoing. I had the pleasure of meeting with the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister Wertheim, just a couple of days ago in Washington, D.C. We discussed several issues of relevance to Argentina, and I believe we see eye to eye on many of these issues. In terms of the detention of Argentinian nationals in Venezuela, and what the OAS can do, this is something which will be discussed when I go back with member states as well, in terms of how we engage with Venezuela, but also if there is evidence about illegal detention or arbitrary detention, but also that certain rights of people are not granted or respected, the OAS will make its own statement with that in mind. The Secretariat of the OAS is guided by not the politics in the hemisphere. That is not our job. That is something member states will take into account. The Secretariat, including the Secretary General, is guided by the principles upon which the OAS has been built. And I have mentioned representative democracy. I have mentioned the rule of law, security issues, the tenets of sustainable development to create prosperity. Those are our marching orders. So I hope that we understand that my approach will be somewhat different in terms of facilitating resolution going forward. So in this particular case, we certainly will seek not only guidance, but also have a discussion with member states how we treat with this. But on the principle, we certainly will engage with Argentina further to receive more information and see what can be done to alleviate this issue in this particular case.
Thank you. Andrés Fidanza from El Observador from Uruguay. What is the OAS's position regarding the upcoming municipal elections in Venezuela in July following the presidential election fraud last year? And separately, what is your opinion on the recent ICE raids on immigrants in the US and the US State Department's decision to review foreign students' social media accounts?
Well, let me start with the last one because it relates to an earlier question about the decisions taken by the United States. It is really up to the government of the United States, the administration, to determine the rules under which they consider granting visas and other kinds of permits to students or other groups. That is something to be respected. That is a decision of national government. And of course, we have always stated that international law and general practices of good behavior and good approach are important. There are issues with regard to privacy and the right on freedom of expression. All of that needs to be taken into account, but it's not up to us to determine in what way the United States wishes to grant access to the country. That is up to the United States authorities. With regard to the upcoming elections in Venezuela, we hold a view that the challenges which Venezuela faced previously, in previous elections, that those have not satisfactorily responded to. We had requested, many countries had requested information with regard to the tallying, the counting of the ballots, the proof of that, the evidence of that, so that we could determine exactly in which way, in what way the election results were going. That has not happened. So what I hope for the elections are important at whatever level elections are, that they will take place in an atmosphere whereby there is no rejection or that every citizen of Venezuela will be able to participate in the election free and without fear. I think it's important that we see full participation of political parties in this process, and that once the election has taken place, that we see in a more transparent way in what way the election outcome or the electorate has decided to vote and what the outcome is. So we will be awaiting that process. Free and fair elections are critical elements of the work of the OAS as well. But it's certainly something which requires full attention, and I hope that the authorities in Venezuela will be allowing for a full, transparent process for the elections at the level of the mayors.
Thank you. We have a question from Jason Calderon from NTN24. Former Secretary General, former OAS Secretary General Luis Almagro stated that dictatorships in the region should not have a seat at the OAS table. What is your position on these statements, and what role do you believe non-democratic regimes should play within the OAS?
Let me say that Luis Almagro and I know each other for a long time, so I respect him. I don't think it would be proper for me to comment on his comments at the moment. But from a general perspective, I have stated before that it's not up to the Secretary General to determine which side the OAS should take in any conflict. The role of the OAS is to be an honest broker, and we cannot take sides. We take sides on principles, not on politics. So the principles, that's where we take sides on. Human rights issues, the observance of human rights, the rule of law, the representative democratic processes, promoting peace and security. We will take sides on that on a principle basis, but not on the politics. It is member states who will determine whether a country can be part of the OAS or not. It is not up to the Secretary General to do that. So I think it's important that we keep clear what the role is of the Secretary General and the member states in this regard.
Thank you very much. Eva Rodriguez from AFP. Do you believe this is also for the Secretary General, do you believe the proposals in the draft resolution on Haiti are sufficient to change the situation on the ground? And the second question is regarding the conflict in Iran. Will you address the issue? Has a joint declaration been planned?
With regard to Haiti, I'm very pleased to see that this General Assembly will consider a resolution on Haiti. It contains certainly the elements which need to be addressed. The resolution will form certainly a basis for further action. We have announced within the OAS already that the Secretariat is preparing, in collaboration with member states, in collaboration with authorities and the mission in Washington, D.C. of Haiti, a roadmap which will include different pillars, 5 pillars, from security, humanitarian assistance, to political processes, consensus building, formulating an agenda towards the future, as well as the holding of representative elections, and then a plan for building economic resilience. For us, it's critical. All these elements, the resolution, the debate, the commitment, the solidarity which is being expressed towards Haiti at this General Assembly, but also beyond, it's critically important that we recognize 2 elements that need to be observed. One is it must be under Haitian leadership. The ownership of the process must be Haitian-led. And that's why we need to work with the Haitian authorities. And I know that there is enormous commitment from within the hemisphere to materialize that. The second element is that we have, as an Inter-American system, certainly as the OAS, been working for many, many years in Haiti to get a more structural approach to betterment. And I think the expectation, the political expectation of member states is, how do we make sure this time that it sticks, that it remains there, that we do not fall back in the same routine? So this is something which is going to be critically important in terms of building a future prospect for sound social and economic development. It's going to be a long haul. It's going to be requiring a lot of money and engagement from the inter-American system, especially the banks, but we need to make sure that whatever roadmap is developed now will result in a more predictable future for Haiti, both from a political perspective as well as from an economic perspective. We want to be helpful, and member states as well, but as I said, this has to happen on the leadership of the Haitian authorities.
Thank you. Edward Rivas from EFE. What kind of support does, this is a follow-up on Haiti, what kind of support does the OAS expect from member states in terms of security and humanitarian assistance for Haiti?
The first and foremost issue at hand with regard to Haiti is, of course, the security issue. But we cannot wait till security is fully guaranteed or mitigated. We will have to work on tracks simultaneously. We will have to work, and this is something which is foreseen in the roadmap which is being developed, is that some of the required investments and activities will need to happen sequentially, one after the other, but some of them can take place at the same time. The political process of developing a forward-looking agenda, political, constitutional reform, economic development, can happen while we deal with the security environment. But humanitarian assistance will need to wait until there is a secure distribution capability from the port to those in need. Only then we can mobilize humanitarian assistance. And I'm very convinced that within the hemisphere there is a great commitment to provide that humanitarian assistance. Is not only food and water and basic needs, it's also medical supplies, school programs and so on, for food and so on. So we will work on this in such a way that there will be a template where member states can say, I'm prepared to help you with this at this moment, but I cannot do that. And it will be a template to choose and I think it will provide a timeline going forward to make sure that we reach that point where Haiti has a legitimate government and a legitimate parliament to govern the country.
Thank you very much. And I have a question here for Robert, and from Robert from Antigua Observer. For both Minister Green and the OAS Secretary General, and I don't see him here. At the summit, it is expected that diplomats will discuss a resolution on the critical mental health crisis in the Americas. While it is a good first step that after years of ignored activism by civil society groups for our governments and our region to take mental health seriously, how does the OAS or how will the government of Antigua and Barbuda plan to expand this resolution?
Thank you, Robert. The clear position is that we're bringing what, in our opinion, is a region-wide problem to a most distinguished and august body, the OAS. We anticipate that the treatment will be such that the takeaway document and the approaches thereafter will see significant programs being developed to deal with the issue across the Americas. If I may speak to our own action or treatment of the subject, first we'd agree that to bring it here is an identification of a problem. You asked the question in Antigua, and so therefore you could help me to expound in this body, in this press conference, on the steps already taken by government of Antigua Barbuda to invest in significant program initiatives to deal with the issue of mental health. Not only have we invested in the physical infrastructure, we've also invested heavily in personnel to impact and to certainly deal with the challenges we see here in Antigua Barbuda. But again, our bringing it to the OAS is because we recognize that there's a broader problem, a wider problem, a bigger problem that affects the entire Americas. And so what we're hoping for is that this Antiguan initiative, if you may call it that, be given the time of day deserves not only in a discussion at the OAS, but certainly in the application of programs, development of programs through POW and other institutions as a takeaway.
I think the minister is very clear about the objectives and the reason why this matter is being raised at an OAS meeting or in the margins of an OAS General Assembly. I just want to add one point, and that is that basically the issue of mental health, which is an increasing problem if you look at the numbers in the Western Hemisphere, touches directly on the pillars upon which the OAS is found. In terms of democracy, their rights, in terms of security, both from a health security perspective as from public safety, personal security, the human rights, how we treat with that as members of a society, a wider society, but also their access to facilities, to economic opportunities, to prosperity. All of this is part of the OAS core objective, core purpose. So for us, it is something which we have to take at heart, and this goes for many other topics in our discourse over the coming months, where we need to make sure that the resolution which will be issued, that it contains actionable items where we can mobilize not only the OAS capabilities, but also the Inter-American system. And the Pan-American Health Organization, as well as the Inter-American Development, come to mind here to develop programs which will support this matter. There used to be a very famous phrase in the Caribbean, and that is that a healthy population is the wealth of the region. And if we look at that, this is exactly what we're trying to achieve. It's a healthy population. Pay attention to all those elements in our societies to make them healthy and contribute to society and its progress. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Foreign Minister, Secretary General, Assistant Secretary General. That's all the time we had. Before going, a friendly reminder that we will have the full recording of the press conference available in our website, YouTube channel, and social media channel. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending this morning. Thank you.
At the heart of the Caribbean, cushioned by white sandy shores and surrounded